Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to what is going to be, I think, our most exciting episode yet of Inside Al Snow's Head. I'm Jarett, and our host, of course, the man who has the head everybody wants to get into, Al Snow. Al, how are you today, sir?
I am doing great. I'm excited to be here, Jared, as always.
Awesome, awesome. I'm excited as well. The most asked about topic is always tough enough. So I figured the fans keep asking about it. We're going to get into it a little bit today. Before we do that, though, I want to bring up a couple quick headlines that I saw in the wrestling world today. One of them was your friend and what should be a future Hall of Famer in my mind, Billy Gunn. I saw a headline today that he recently secured the rights to the name Billy Gunn finally, which, believe it or not, is not his real name, nor is Mr. Ass. So Al Snow, this was your name. You came up with this name. It wasn't given to you by Vince or Heyman. The name had value before you signed with the WWF at the time. How did it work during your time in the WWF and WWE, and how did you get to walk away with Al Snow when so many others haven't been able to walk away with their name? Most recently, Cody Rhodes.
Well, because of the fact that, like you'd said, I had that name. It was my original intellectual property. I had made that name into public persona before I had went back to WWE with it. So as a result, I was able to sign an addendum to my contract that it was my original intellectual property, meaning I owned it, and therefore when I left, I could take the name with me and continue to use it. It wasn't theirs. They leased the use of my name while I was there. If WWE creates your persona and gives you your name while you're there, then they own it. It's their original intellectual property. For instance, like Cody Rhodes wasn't Cody Rhodes until he went through WWE's developmental program,
Sure.
and WWE then now owned the rights to the name Cody Rhodes. And it's tough because you're on the one of the greatest platform as far as wrestling to create a brand and to sell yourself. But when they own that brand, when you leave, that audience knows you as Cody Rhodes, or knows you as Billy Gunn. And then when you're going out and going on the open market, promoters can't use that name Billy Gunn, or they can't use that name Cody Rhodes. They've got to come up with some other way of utilizing that name that people are known and have been educated to and want to pay to see, and that makes it tough. A lot of performers have gone to extreme lengths to get the rights back to that name. China legally changed her name to China so that she could utilize the name, and I think Ryback had done something similar. Ultimate Warrior had also done the same thing, changing his name just to Warrior, so that they could utilize the persona and the name that they kind of genuinely created themselves and made a success.
Putting you on the spot a little bit here, since you've kind of done both now. You've been the promoter and the booker, and you've been the talent. Who deserves the right to that name? Because again, the company spent a ton of money developing that name, putting you on TV, but you're the one that got the name over and made the name relevant. So when they decide to part ways, who do you think deserves to hang on to that name?
That's a really tough call, because like you just pointed out, I mean, if it wasn't for the talent, then the name wouldn't mean anything. But the talent wouldn't have the name, nor would they have the platform, nor would they, have the ability to utilize that if it wasn't for the company giving that name to them. So yeah, that's a real that's a tough spot, man. There's no easy answer. I mean, I of course would want to go on the talent side, um, but I do understand from a company side too, that it's their original intellectual property, and that's how they're going to stay in business, is by keeping control of as much of that original intellectual property as they can, so that they can, because it comes down to, if they release that intellectual property, um, all the time. Now we're looking at the wrestling promotion. WWE tries to capitalize on by creating content that features the talent with that intellectual property, that name. Well, now they've got to pay the talent for that name, a name that was really rightfully theirs and that they bought. That now they got to pay each time they utilize it. Where if they retain the ownership rights to it, then they can use it, you know, whenever they need to. And that's a much more wiser economic way to do business.
How many people are out there just going outlaw and saying, I probably aren't allowed to use this name, but I'm using it anyway?
There's probably quite a few people, and then they're doing the restraining order,
Cease and desists
cease and
and the.
desist dance. Yeah, that's.
All right, yeah, I figured as much. In some other Al Snow news, I read an article this week by Kayfabe News, and they had mentioned that your friend, an associate, partner, head may actually be interpreted by some as some sort of fellatio related double entendre. You got any comment on this ridiculousness?
Yeah. Well, there is that possibility that, there are people who could, I'm sure, interpret that as, like you said, some double entendre in concerns to adult relations that involve oral activity. Um, that's possible. I'm going to go out on a limb and say highly likely, but the God's honest truth is that it was never, what does everybody want? What does everybody need? What does everybody love? That was never meant as a double entendre. That was quite honestly in reference to the plastic head, to head, to give my character depth, and it was me thinking ahead, no pun intended, and trying to create basically an angle for myself where I would grow jealous of the success of Head. That after all of this time, all those years of trying, and then finally it seeming like I succeeded, I wasn't the thing that everybody wanted. I wasn't the thing that everybody needed. I wasn't the thing that everybody loved. That was Head. And so, I would eventually grow jealous of Head and become angry and then turn on Head and have literally an angle, a storyline between me and Head where we were fighting. And then eventually I'd make up with him and life would go on. I do this in a shorter form a lot of times when I'm wrestling on, shows and they ask me to put somebody over and I'll put the guy over. And then I'll get angry and argue with the Head and then we'll, start fighting. And I'll literally have a whole match with the Head. And then I'll leave and they'll start chanting, for Head, and then I'll run back in the ring at the right time, grab Head, and we'll make up, and everything's happy. So
It's almost like you've thought about this before. Um,
maybe.
so anytime an article pops up now with your name on it, I get a million tags and shares on it on social media by all my friends and family who obviously are fans of the show. And then the word fellatio pops up in this one, and so about 10 years ago, I was out to dinner with my wife and our children, and her cousin was with us. And dude, I am a classic, stonebreaker. I just like to have fun. My sister-in-law's boyfriend worked for me at a car dealership, and I convinced him that the spot between his thumb and his pointer finger was his sphincter. And when you're shaking hands with people, you want to make sure you're getting a solid sphincter to sphincter contact when you're greeting a customer and you're shaking hands. And
Right.
and if you don't, you could tell him, come on, get that sphincter in my hand. And the day that he stormed into my office red faced and announced that that was not your sphincter, I knew that he had found out the hard way on the lot. But so we're out to dinner at TGI Fridays, and my wife's cousin and the waiter certainly are getting along very well. So I had mentioned to her that if this was going to go any further, and she was going to possibly end up in a situation of performing some fellatio for this gentleman, I would like it to be before the bill so we could benefit from some sort of post filleted discount. And she starts giggling and rolls her eyes and starts proclaiming out loud, for everybody around us to hear, that she is going to perform fellatio for our waiter. And she says this about 3 times, in a joking manner. And I look at her and I said, "What are you doing right now? We're in TGI Fridays on a Saturday night." And she goes, rolls her eyes and looks at me and she goes, "Do you think anybody in here knows what your made up words really mean?" And I said, "Slide your phone out and Google that word for me." And she did. And we all had a great laugh. And she got her bill and got the hell out of there faster than anyone I've ever seen. So anytime I see that word, it always reminds me of that. And I know she listens. So hi, Melissa. Um,
Well, it's very nice that Melissa's clearly very special.
Yeah, gosh, she is indeed. So, okay, enough of that. On to Tough Enough, which is what everybody has asked about. And we have spoken before in the past about Tough Enough a little bit. And I had mentioned that I had not been a weekly watcher of Tough Enough, and for reasons that you explained to me maybe weren't accurate. So, as fans were asking for it, I went back and I binge watched it over the last week, and I really enjoyed it a lot. And it certainly was not what I thought it was. And I understand why I get so many comments about this. And you say that it's one of the things that you're the most proud of in your career, because it really gave me a whole new respect, not just for you and the other trainers, but for the business alone. So, I want to say that, and I'm sure you hear that all the time. Do you still hear about Tough Enough when you're at the conventions and the signings and working shows?
Oh, constantly. I do. It had such an incredible reach. I mean, it was on a mainstream broadcast, on a cable television on MTV and went worldwide, and you know they did constant reruns. You'd have the new episode every Thursday night, and then they would just do constant reruns of that episode all during the week because they were short on programming. So, people got to watch it and watch it in huge numbers, and it was very successful. And I think probably more people know me, through that exposure than they do in all the years of my being a professional wrestler. And it was I'm very proud of it because it was it, like you said, there are a lot of people that if you were a wrestling fan, it gave you a new insight and a new appreciation to just how much hard work it takes to do it, and gave you a new respect for the performers. And if you were not a fan, it made a lot of people fans. I can't tell you the number of people that have walked up to me in public places and, oh yeah, I remember Tough Enough, and my wife, my this, my that, my other, they never watched wrestling, but they watched Tough Enough, and then started watching wrestling because they wanted to find out what happened to the kids, and that's the greatest part of that show is it was such a great infomercial for professional wrestling in general, and really sold professional wrestling and brought new members into the audience and helped grow the audience, because people got to know and care about the performers.
And that's absolutely exactly what happens. So, speaking of people that you get to know and care about, real quick, I want to run down a few folks here because you said JR was the one who approached you about the opportunity. And just to put it out there, I've done a lot of research on everything you've already talked about on Tough Enough. And I know sometimes our fans mention that they hear something that you've already spoken about. And we apologize, but we want to make sure that everybody gets the full scoop. So, I'll do my
Sure.
best to try to touch on some new stuff, but there's some stuff we're just going to have to relive. So, I heard you mention that JR approached you about the opportunity. And what were you initially expecting? I mean, were you expecting to be training guys and there were going to be cameras there, or were you expecting to be part of a reality show? What were your initial thoughts?
I had no expectations when both JR and then Kevin Dunn approached me about doing this because something like this had never been done at that point in time. There was the real world and there was Survivor. There was not a plethora of you know reality shows, and it's certainly not reality shows like this. Not just because of wrestling, but just this type of format. Um, where people competed, other than Survivor, people competed to win a prize, but these people were competing. The prize was a career. These young people were competing to have, live a dream. And I think that ultimately was the real appeal for Tough Enough was, no matter whether you wanted to be a professional wrestler or not, okay, that aside, if you watched it, you could relate to it because let's face it, we as kids all wanted to be firemen, police officers, race car drivers, magicians, acrobats, lion tamers, rock stars, etc. And to be able to watch a reality show and watch these kids coming to grips with the reality meeting the dream and whether or not they could live up to and handle that, you know, was was cool to watch. And but having expectations, I didn't have it. I didn't know what to expect. I mean, I had no idea, no clue, no anticipation whatsoever because there had been nothing to even base it on.
Sure, sure. There wasn't much like that out there. So, real quick
Uh,
for our fans and maybe those who are just the casual wrestling fan, uh, who is Kevin Dunn?
Kevin Dunn is the president of television for WWE. He has been involved with WWE for probably a total of 30 plus years in that position.
Safe to say that he is the biggest or most influential person there, not named McMahon or Helmsley.
I would say so. Yeah, absolutely. Kevin Dunn is definitely he and Vince. They've known each other for many years. Kevin's father, produced TV for Vince and Vince's father back in the day. So they have a very long-standing relationship.
Does the talent have to deal with Kevin Dunn? Is he somebody that you ever have an interaction with?
Not really. No, no. The talent wouldn't really ever get much of an opportunity to deal with directly or interact with them. I did because of working on that project on Tough Enough and became friends with him and knowing him better. And he's a great guy, and it was great of him to give me that opportunity.
So right here at this point, at the beginning of season one, how important is this project to Vince McMahon? Is this something that he is very involved in? Is he just kind of leaving it up to Kevin and the trainers that are there and he's getting updates? Where is he at right now at the beginning of season one?
Season one and throughout all the seasons, you know, Vince left it up to other people. I mean, this was certainly a important project, um, because it was in relationship with MTV, and of course they wanted to succeed because it's a reflection on WWE and on and that relationship with MTV. Um, they want it to go well, and they want it to be successful. But the very first season, we were left pretty much alone. I mean, because I think nobody really knew anything about it or what it was, or really had an interest in it. Because it was such an odd and foreign concept.
And that's why I asked it, for that part of season one. So now, another character that we see throughout who just seems like such an awesome guy. Tell me about, at this time, who is John Gaborik and how does he get involved in this project?
John Gaborick was brought in by Kevin Dunn, and as a producer, and John, Kevin Dunn, when I first was speaking to him, he's like, "Oh, I'm going to introduce you to Big," and I'm like, "What the hell's a Big?" I don't even know what a Big is, and
Sounds scary.
yeah, but that's a childhood name that John has had. From even when he was a little kid, his dad named him, Big John or just Big, and he carried it through for the rest of his life, being known as Big. And, he's a great, awesome individual and did a fantastic job of helping to supervise the editors, with Tough Enough and to, ensure that, that the wrestling that we did came across and looked the absolute best, that it was a representative, it was the best representation of professional wrestling in general and of WWE.
So, you guys, I imagine, while the cameras and everybody is at babysitting the house, listening to everybody talk about how sore they are at their phone calls, are you and Big staying somewhere? Where are you guys at while these shows are being filmed?
Well, while the show was being filmed in Stanford, they just put me up at the hotel, at the Radisson Hotel, and I'd stay there, for weeks at a time. We did take us, 13 weeks or so to, do the show, and I'd stay there at the Radisson, and then when we went out to LA, I would stay at a, God, I forget what they called those. They're corporate apartments that are
Like a
rented.
like a Corman suite or something.
Yeah, I can't really remember what it was called.
Well,
Uh,
we'll get to
but
LA.
stayed in, Marina Del Rey and Woodland Hills, respectively, season 2 and 3. And, I loved it. I mean, I really, really enjoyed being a part of Tough Enough and, really hated to see it end.
Well, you guys had some awesome seasons that everybody loved. Now, in the beginning of season one of the guys that you guys selected, Tom, he doesn't sign. What was that all about?
Season 1, Tom. I'm trying to
He was
think of,
he. I know it's been a while. You said you haven't watched it. So Tom was one of your initial picks to be in the house, and on the first day, Big shows up and says that Tom's not going to be joining us. He didn't want to sign the paperwork. Was there something in that paperwork that would make somebody not want to sign on the dotted line to be a part of the show?
no, not at all. It just gives gives MTV the release to use their likeness. And, it's a very typical type of release. That's all it is. And I'm sure, Tom, either got some bad advice or bad direction and, got scared and didn't want to sign it, thinking that he was signing away his firstborn or something like that. That happens. And it's no surprise, you know.
Yeah. Well, he
Um,
didn't have a shot
but
anyway. So,
you get those people that, they think they know more about what they're doing. Instead of just taking it to a professional, to to an attorney or something, if they're that concerned, they jump to conclusions and assumptions and then make the decision that they don't want to be a part of it, and then miss out on an incredible opportunity.
which he certainly did. So, how we've talked about this in previous episodes, and somebody asked it. You said that this was very much a television show. Not to get it wrong. So, like, how much of this is MTV controlled and how much of this is WWE controlled, and the contestants that are picked, are you guys told this is who's getting in, or did you guys really get to pick who was going to be in that house?
A little bit of both. MTV had its influence because of the fact that they wanted to ensure that, there were people that were in the house that were relatable to their audience, and also, that would be good TV. They're looking to produce a television show, but they also followed our lead, and in the fact that we wanted to ensure that the people that got in there were people that really wanted to and had a passion for to be a professional wrestler. And so we never really had a whole lot of dissent as far as, you know, uh, agreeing. The only time that I really came to mind is Tough Enough 2. John Morrison tried out, and they really were kind of convinced that John was just there to be a television star, just to be on TV, not be a wrestler. Now, this is MTV, not even WWE guys like myself. This was MTV. And so we passed on John for season 2. Well, then I knew of and heard of John going to wrestling school on his own, his own dime. And they contacted John, MTV did, casting to bring him back to try out for Tough Enough 3. And I knew of it, of John's involvement in the wrestling school, and and I didn't believe that John was there just to be on TV. I thought he really wanted to be there. So, it came time to pick the final contestants, the final 13 or whatever. And I remember I had to go and speak to John Miller, the president of MTV. We had a meeting and basically convince him and several other people that John was there for the right reasons, and had the talent and the ability to win the whole thing. I really felt like, and you know, and it turns out he not only won it, but he went on to have a hell of a career.
Absolutely, but him and the Miz, the two of the most popular ever to come off of that show, probably. Now you talked about him having going off and spending some money on his own dime and having some training. And one of the notes that I've got here from the first season, which kind of threw me off guard, was I noticed that Chris Nowinski got quite a bit of shit because he already had a little bit of training under his belt. He had been at
Yeah.
Killer Kowalski's school, and I noticed a couple of times the term are you going to be able to learn the WWF way? And he was yelled at during training. Is that a thing? Is there a way to lock up that the WWF teaches you that you can't learn?
No, no, but they have a real.
Now
They're
that wasn't you. That wasn't you that said
No, of
that, by
course
the
it's
way.
not, because I wouldn't say it anyways. It's a real cool drink the Kool Aid kind of belief that WWF or WWE has its own unique way. So to the point that where they would even say that, to the developmental talent when they would come down here and go, well, yeah, but it's different in WWE, or yeah, it doesn't really work. It applies here, but you know, and it's like, no, it doesn't. It's exactly the same thing. When that is just WWE does have its own unique way of doing certain things, but when the pyro stops, the music ends, and the bell rings, what they're doing in Louisville, Kentucky is exactly what they should be doing in WWE. It's no different. That doesn't that and to try to sell that idea, especially to your own developmental talent, and the fact that I had been up there in their ring for how many years, so I kind of know what they're doing, what they were doing and how they did it. So, and you would think that that would be why I would be in the position I was in to communicate that to the developmental talent. Um, but there's this belief that yeah, it's done one way other places, but here it's done like they have this whole unique reinvented the wheel style in the ring, and they don't. It's, you know they do promotion wise, and platform wise, and production wise, and etc. And yeah, the style might be a little different, but that's the thing. When we had regional or territorial wrestling, every territory, every regional promotion had its own unique style, and its way of vision and stuff. That was representative of the booker and the owner of the company, and the promoter, and but everybody still sold exactly the same thing, which was the finish. And that was how you were able to go from you know working in Memphis to working in New York to working in Oregon to working in Florida to working in Texas. Ultimately, at the end of the day, everybody was selling the exact same thing. They might, one area might be more faster paced wrestling. One might be more slow moving, methodical, grabbing holds. Another one might be more mat based. Another one might be more, you know, faster paced and higher flying. Because one might be big guys, majority of it, and one might be little ones. But they all still sold the same thing. you know.
Absolutely.
And then the same goes for, but there's this belief that they've reinvented the wheel and that they're selling something totally unique, which they're not. They're selling the finish and they're selling the wrestlers as if they are actually stars. Well, yeah, everybody does that.
So the first season, you're paired up with Taz. You've also got Jacqueline there with you as well, and Tori. And you guys, obviously, you had visitors and guests that came in throughout. So, how difficult is it training with other wrestlers that you didn't pick, that you were told here are the other trainers that you're with, when knowing that everybody's kind of got a different philosophy? Were there times that the trainers would get aggravated with each other that maybe we didn't see on screen?
Everybody would, was pretty cool. I mean, amazingly, and I don't know why, but like, you know, Taz had his own, idea, but it kind of fit loosely with what I was doing, anyways. And I was the one that was primarily there. And we did have, Taz and and actually Taz, Tori, and Jacqueline. We all confronted Taz one day because we kind of had a bit of a run-in and butted heads, over Taz's behavior and you know, ideas of how to train on season one. Season two, we really didn't have. Everybody followed my lead. I don't know why, but they did. And the same goes for season three with Bill and Ivory. It was kind of like it was established. I guess people thought that it was my show, which it wasn't, and that they just I was the head trainer, again, no pun intended, and that they just follow my lead. But it was really, we only had that one run in. Taz and I and Tori and Jacqueline, we all kind of confronted Taz, and that was done off camera. Big had asked for them to shut the cameras down, and when we had that conversation.
So Stephanie McMahon was, showed up quite a few times during the first season of Tough Enough. What was her role back here in 2001?
I'm not quite sure because I know Stephanie and Shane both. Vince had them do every job there was in WWE so that they would know the company inside and out from the top to the bottom. So from menial jobs, setting up the ring to, working at the warehouse, they handled, every single position, and so that they get a real true experience about the company and how it worked, and a respect for everybody that did those jobs. So at that time, I'm not sure what job she'd have been doing.
But it was well known that she's someday going to be the boss if she's not right now.
No, at that time, no, that
No.
was not. No, huh?
Nice. So she was just a talent in the locker room. She was one of the crew.
Well, she wasn't a talent in the locker room. She was, performing whatever other job she was doing at the time. But
Okay.
and she was Vince's daughter. I mean, that she wouldn't be just another face in the
Right,
crowd,
of course.
no matter what. And
Probably
uh,
tough to blend in.
and I would think that the assumption would have been that the next in line would have been the heir apparent would have been Shane.
Here's something that I've always kind of wondered, and I thought about it during this show as I watched it go. How does the merchandise work for a wrestler? And what I mean is, like, do they just give you a box of your own shirts? Here you go, wear these to the ring. Do you have to ask for them? Do they take them out of your check? Do you just run out to the merch stand and tell them, hey, give me 3 Al Snow shirts? How you getting stuff at this point?
Well, they will supply you shirts, and if they need to, they'll run out and get them for you off the stand because they want you to wear them because that's how you sell them,
Of course.
to the audience. And they would be happy if you wore them all the time and didn't wear anything else. They'd be thrilled for that. And but most guys, only wear them to and from the ring and not much else elsewhere.
So
Uh,
back then, there was just a guy that you could say, if you wanted a shirt, you could just say,
mm-hmm.
hey, run up to the stand, grab me a Job Squad shirt, run it down.
Yeah, or you'd walk up to them and ask for one, directly from them. Yeah, so you'd have to wear. Yeah,
All right, so in 2018, if somebody wanted to get their hands on a really cool wrestling shirt, what do you think they should do?
Well, they probably should go to collarandelbowbrand.com, Jared. I would
Wow.
imagine that'd be the
Collar
place I would go because that would be the place that you get the really coolest wrestling shirts you could possibly get, and then be able to wear them in any setting without having to worry about some doink walking up to you and going, "Hey, why you like that stuff? It's fake." Well, God, kiss me and call me sweet. I would have never guessed.
Absolutely. I'm a huge fan of these collar and elbow shirts. I keep ordering them. It's not, they're very comfortable. They're awesome shirts. Guys, if you are not following Collar and Elbow brand on social media, make sure you do so. You can always use Al's code Snowman to save 10%. But when you follow them on Twitter or on Facebook, sometimes they just decide to have a crazy sale, like buy
Yeah.
one get one half price, or on March 16th for Austin 316 Day, it was 31.6% off every shirt that you purchased. During WrestleMania weekend, it was 34% off. So make sure
Plus
you
you can
follow this.
plus you can add the 10% discount on top of that.
Yeah. So make sure you guys are following collarandelbowbrand.com because, like I said, they're throwing out some awesome deals and some really cool shirts. Do yourself a favor, make sure you check these out. If you're a wrestling fan, you know a wrestling fan, make sure you go ahead and check out collarandelbowbrand.com. Give them a follow. We just had Memorial Day pass. There's still the military shirt that is available. This military inspired shirt, it's really an awesome shirt. And where are the proceeds going? A portion of the proceeds are being donated where, Al?
A portion of the proceeds are donated to the American Legion and all of their charitable endeavors that they are doing for our men and women of the armed forces.
Absolutely, which is awesome. So, guys, please check out collarandelbowbrand.com. Follow them on Facebook and Twitter, Collar and Elbow Brand. This is where they say street fashion and wrestling passion kind of collide. Um,
Yes.
so, so go ahead and check those out, guys. I've got my collar and elbow graphite mirror shirt on right now. Like I said, I always make sure I have my uniform on when we're sitting down to record. So, now the first season, how much of this was real training? And I don't mean it like that because we saw this was real training. But so did Maven get the same Al Snow program that somebody would have got at Body Slammers back in Lima, Ohio?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just trained them, and I still to this day train others the way I was trained myself. Yeah, that doesn't change. That doesn't alter. I was never given any direction by MTV or the production people or anything like that. It was left totally 100% up to me.
Okay, and that's really what I was asking. I don't think that you would ever change the integrity of how you train somebody. I just meant like what I meant was this a training program and the cameras were rolling and they ended up
Yeah,
getting little pieces of it, or did they say, "Okay, Al, have him slam him so we can get a shot here"? Did
no,
did
it
that?
was it was a training program, and the cameras were turned on. Unlike now, where we have they call it scripted reality. It wasn't scripted. It was literally, they turned the cameras on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and had every inch of the house with cameras and three shifts of camera crews and sound crews and lighting crews there to catch anything and everything that happened day in and day out and day in, night out. And that was, and, they would have situations, they would have events, they would have trips, they would, hey, we're going to take everybody out to the nightclub tonight, hoping that there would be some drama or interaction or things that would play out and happen because of the change in the locale. Not to mention it would create more interesting TV as far as just changing the scenery from the inside of a empty gym in a ring, and watching these people just only interact when they wrestled. Um, so they would that was done, but literally there was never told, well, you need to say exactly this or do exactly that or act like this or it was it was just they turned the cameras on and that was it. And in fact, we weren't really with the initial one, the season one. We were not supposed to interact, the talent or the kids or myself or anyone that with the camera crews, because there was the belief that the less we interacted with them, the more they would fade away into the woodwork, and then we wouldn't be you know self-conscious, and they'd be able to catch more stuff, and without us having to either put on for the cameras or and fake it, or worried and be shy, camera shy, and not do as much or say some stuff that otherwise would have came out. But they kind of realized that there was no way to keep that from happening because we were around each other 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
How difficult is it for you as a trainer to sit back and have these guests come in and talk to them? And because there were times, we talked about this before, Triple H comes in, he takes the guys in the ring, he starts throwing punches with them, and you haven't even really gone over that with them at this point. um, Kurt Angle comes in and he's talking to the guys and he's telling them how he believes they shouldn't train too hard over the top. They should save it for the ring. And I almost paused it and took a picture of your face as he was saying that and sent it to you in the background because it was pretty
Huh,
classic.
yeah.
Um, is it difficult as a trainer, like, here Al, this class, get them ready to be WWF superstars, but we're going to sprinkle in everybody else's perspective and words and stuff?
Well,
And
it's hard. Yeah, it's hard because the true it really is the truth is, too many cooks in the kitchen spoil the soup. And your wrestling, I'm not teaching guys specifics, okay? At that point in time, I'm teaching them uh it, here's how it goes. All right? Learning to perform as a professional wrestler is no different than learning to read and write. What I mean by that is that you learn wrestling moves and you learn how to physically control yourself so that you land consistently in a manner that will allow you to do so safely. Does it still hurt? Yes, it does. But will you get injured? No. Hopefully not, if you do it correctly. You learn how to land as flat as possible to use the absorption of the ring so that you can, you know, um, spread the impact over as large a surface area as possible. That's it. That's the real physics of what you're learning to do. Does that mean that it doesn't hurt at all? No. It just means that you protect yourself. Okay. You also start to learn those wrestling moves, those wrestling holds, and and those are basically all they are is you're learning the alphabet. You're learning A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Well, as you learn those holds, those moves, those bumps, you're learning the alphabet. You still don't know how to put those letters together. So then we start working on you actually learning how to string together those letters to make words. Very simple, rudimentary words: cat, sea, tree, run, so that you start to learn to develop and understand how those letters go together to create words that create images and thoughts and ideas. Now we learn how to string those together to make simple sentences. See the cat run up the tree. That's where you start to learn how to do high spots and connect all of those letters and words together to now make short sentences that now communicate a full picture of not just what it is you're talking about, but what it's doing and where it went. And then you collect those sentences together and you start learning how to make paragraphs to elaborate and tell more of a story about a thought or idea. Okay. And that means that you start connecting those high spots together in the body of a match, along with all of the holds and takedowns and switches and reversals, and you taking a bump. Then you collect those together and you put those paragraphs together to where you start learning how to create chapters. And then as years go by, you start learning how to put those chapters together to make a book to really tell a full and complete story. But all of those skills are just to do that. The end game is to be able to communicate a full story, beginning, middle, and end, with an antagonist and a protagonist when you're in the ring performing in front of an audience. But to start to do that is to first learn the alphabet, then learn how to take those letters and make words, then how to put those words together to make sentences, and then how those sentences go together to make a paragraph, and how those paragraphs go together to make a chapter, and then chapters make a book. That's it, and that doesn't change. So in Tough Enough, I'm teaching them how to put letters together, how to string that, all that, but I'm only getting up to really them basically learning how to make paragraphs. That's about as far as we get, you know. And then being able to learn all of that other stuff requires experience. But at least if I can get them to where they can create paragraphs, then they're at least somewhat semi prepared to go out and be led through matches, which is where they went immediately into the deep end of the wrestling business to WWE and got on live on Raw. For a lot of times for the very first match, which is insane. But for the most part, everybody did well.
So you say that that's insane, and some of the things that I'm thinking about is one of the guests that come on and talk to him is, Kurt Angle, who got through the wrestling business faster than anyone maybe that I've ever seen. And people talk about all the time what a unique learner he was and how nobody picks it up as fast as he does. You guys have the Big Show on there, whose very first match was a pay-per-view against Hulk Hogan, and he wins the world heavyweight title. Now I understand that there's stories in both of those, and the Big Show ended up getting sent down to OVW, but that was the first thing that I thought of. Is if I was sitting there, that's what I would think about to myself. Here's a guy that was an Olympic wrestler, and he was the WWE champion in a year, and here's a guy that was just big, and his first match made him the WCW champion.
Yeah, and the potential for that to happen to them is there too. There's no set rule on who makes it in what amount of time. There's no way you can predict or apply a certain standard. At the end of the day, I don't care who you are, what you look like, how long you've been wrestling. If people will pay to see you, guess what I'm going to do? I'm gonna highlight you. I'm gonna spotlight you, and I'm gonna do everything I can to put you in there with people that will hide your weaknesses and your inexperiences and accentuate your strengths in spite of you, so that I can continue to make money off of and with you.
I want to say that one of the things that I said originally was that I didn't watch Tough Enough because I was afraid that it was like a magician giving away its secrets. And you had told me that it was very much not that. And me having that opinion was completely wrong. Lots of people out there have that opinion about it, and they are the exact same as I was previously, and it's that they never watched it. They didn't take time to sit down and watch it because there was nothing in there that I didn't already know as far as wrestling goes. And there was stuff that I figured out that, like, wow, these bumps really hurt. When you lined everybody up and showed all the rope burns on the exact same spots on everybody from where they were hitting the ropes, those were the kind of things that made me really appreciate what happens inside that ring. And it really takes away that wrestling is fake mantra. Not that I ever thought that, but if anybody that ever did think that sat down and watched that show, wow, it's an eye opener.
Well, and again, that's why it was so valuable, because it gave you a new respect for what took place in the ring. It exposed the wrestling business and all of that kind of stuff. That was started by people within the wrestling business who were, probably a bit bitter, a bit jealous of these kids and the opportunity and the exposure that gave them, and the fact that it made them truly stars on a different level because of that exposure. And so there were those people, what a shock, who were jealous of that opportunity and then started downplaying or degrading the show, saying that it exposed the wrestling business. And then fans would pick up on that, read it somewhere, heard it somewhere, and then would tout that opinion around as if, they even understood what it was that they were saying, when they've never been in the wrestling business and therefore don't know whether or not it was exposed or not.
And that's very true. So me as a fan, somebody who's never been in a ring, I've never taken a bump. I am just a fan, somebody that's really just enjoyed the business my whole life. Um, One of the things that I took away from this was the punishment that a body takes just in the training of this. Now, I hear a lot of wrestlers, and we've talked about this before, and I know it's a sticking point to you, and we don't have to get into it right now. They talk about paying dues. And I've got to ask, it's got to be just as difficult, maybe if not more difficult, to have your training sessions with tons of television cameras around in front of millions and millions of people each week to build that experience. But realistically, there's a lot of wrestlers that talk about paying dues, and when they say that, they mean they spent $300 and went to a wrestling school.
Well, I guess I assume, what they really are talking about is the fact that they've had to go out and wrestle in on shows and either not get paid or not paid very little, and and they claim that they're paying their dues, and they run around and they moan and cry, and a lot of times they do this on their own promos when they're in the ring on a wrestling show, and they're basically they're crying and complaining about doing the thing that they claimed that they would do anything that they could get the chance to do. They'd do anything, all you'd have to do is ask them. They'd take a bullet. They would eat acid. They walk across hot coals. Anything in the world just to have an opportunity to go out and do the very thing that they are now complaining about doing and saying that it was a cross to bear and that they paid their dues. You never stop paying your dues. Paying your dues is the fact that you're never entitled to anything in this business. You always have to earn everything you get. Every time you go to the ring, you live and die by the last thing you have done. And you constantly have to earn your spot. You constantly have to earn your spot on the card. You constantly have to earn, the other wrestlers' respect. You've got to constantly earn the promoter's willingness to promote you by giving him something to promote. You've got to constantly earn the interest and the money that the audience pays to see you with, because you're not entitled to anything. This is not a job. You're not an employee. You did not get hired at Walmart, meaning that if you spend 10 years at Walmart, you're entitled to a certain amount of seniority, and therefore when it comes time to pick the schedule, you get the days you want, and the guy that just started working last week gets whatever days he's stuck with. You get entitled to a certain amount of a raise each year because you spend a certain amount of time there and have a certain amount of seniority. Wrestling business doesn't work that way. Never has, and it never will. So your belief and idea that paying your dues is that at some point in time they stop because you simply wrestled enough on enough shows for little or no money. And why you're going out and telling people this, I have no idea. Because the whole purpose of you being on that microphone is to sell yourself like you're a star. So why are you telling people that you're wrestling for no money, meaning that you have no value? Even from the days when you started, when you should be trying to tell everybody that you were a star from the moment you got in. You may not have been, but hey, do they know it? No. Do you think that everything that you see on TV, on every other format, is all 100% real and they're not feeding you a line about the person that you're watching and that they're a star of some sort? From the days go, they're saying that they were stars. They're not saying that they went out there and performed for next to nothing or nothing. So don't belittle yourself. And don't moan about the very thing that you supposedly love to do and want the audience to love seeing you do, like it's some cross for you to have to bear.
Yeah, it's pretty outrageous how many, when I typed in tough enough shoot, how much stuff came up. And we're going to avoid all the
Ugh.
negativity because it doesn't really matter.
It's just, listen, all that negativity is, quite honestly, is just jealousy of an opportunity that these people got. Because let's face it, Jarrett, who in their right mind, if they were put in that position, would have went, yeah, you know what? No, I don't want to be on a national and international mainstream television show that could possibly make me a star and enable me to live out my dreams. No, I want to take it the tough way. I want to go out and I just want to work, you know,
You'd have to be an
from
idiot.
the bottom. But you, yes, a complete and utter moron. And let's be honest, if you said that you would have chosen the other path, you'd have to be a liar.
Correct. And I think the same can be said for why WWF or WWE talent would want to be included in something like this. You've talked a million times about how people would do anything for 20 seconds of airtime just to be standing in the background of so here's an opportunity to be on MTV each week. Who wouldn't want to do it? One, okay, so here we go. We'll have a
And
little
they
bit.
were and they were reluctant for season one, but and I told Big this. I said, mark my words. Come if this is successful, I said we're gonna have to beat them off with a stick for season two. And guess what? Those that didn't want anything to do with and didn't want to come near it for season one could not wait. The boys could not wait to line up and be a guest on season two and season three. They wanted desperately to be there.
I could only imagine. So there's a shoot interview from, there's no date on it, but if I had to guess, I would say maybe '06, '07, and it is the Road Dogg and Billy Gunn. And they shit all over Tough Enough. Now, to be clear, nobody said anything bad about you or any of the trainers. The concept itself, they shit all over it, and it's the worst thing ever. And how could anyone do it? Yet, I'm pretty sure old Billy Gunn was a trainer on the last season of Tough Enough on the reboot
Yeah,
when they did it. So it's time can do so much.
it can heal a lot of wounds. It can change a lot of minds and a lot of opinions. And I'm glad that he was able to see a different viewpoint and then be able to take advantage of and enjoy an opportunity with such a format that at one time could have been considered just the bane of existence of professional wrestling.
So season one wraps up. Maven wins. Maven and Josh both go on to have pretty good careers. If Maven doesn't break his leg, who knows? He was on a pretty strong trajectory.
Oh yeah,
But before he
and
has that
Nydia
broken
and
leg.
Nydia. Listen. Everybody forgets, and Nydia had a really good run. She did very well and was very talented, and but then her run came to an end, and there's no telling if she hadn't went on and decided to take herself out of the wrestling business. She could have had possibly another run in a different way. You know, that's how it works.
So the first season did not feel like a reality show to me. And again, like you said, it was kind of before the age of reality shows, so there wasn't a ton to steal from or to use from or to swap with. Were Maven and Nydia, were those the picks? Were you told these were the picks? Did you know all along, wow, these two are, definitely going to be how real was the elimination process?
It was very real, and I made the choices as to who got eliminated and who got picked to win. That was a fact, and those people were eliminated based on evaluating them and seeing how they were coming along and determining whether or not they had what it took or that it was going to take longer than what we had to make that possible.
How many extra weeks did the Al Snow wig and get Josh? Be honest.
Uh, no extra weeks. And Josh had his own charisma and his own ability, and it was interesting because like I told Nowinski, I said, listen, you will have your opportunity, and if you stick with this, you will have your opportunity. It's just not the right time or the right reason to let you win. And I told Josh, I said, quite honestly, you're physically the most talented of them, but you're so small, you would have a hard way to go in WWE. And I said, trust me, if you want this, you will have an opportunity. You will have a career doing doing something in the wrestling business. And he and I because I knew Maven had all the tools at the right time for the right reason. And and the same goes for Nydia. Taylor, I knew fit more in Japan, and she went and had a short run, but she had a run over in Japan, and I think she could have went back and had another run if she'd have pursued it, but she chose not to.
So season one wraps up how soon after you're done filming season one do you know there's going to be a season two?
I can't really remember how long that time frame, but I think we were getting the numbers, you know, as it started airing, and I think it wasn't long into the season that we were told that we were going to have an opportunity for season two.
I've heard people say that Taz was not asked back because he was too rough on the guys, and that they were afraid that one of the guys was going to end up kicking his ass.
No, I never heard that. I would assume that the reason Taz wasn't asked back was because he was brought back as a guest,
Yeah.
you know. But I would assume it was one because of his obligations to SmackDown, which he was doing commentary at the time, and two, they wanted a different vibe or you know different trainers keeping me at the helm.
Was Taz a dick the whole time, or was editing? Did they just find his worst moments to kind of make it look like it was good cop bad cop between you and him?
No, Taz was pretty much a hard ass, from days go. He was, that's some guys. That's their approach is to, be that hard ass, and especially for Taz. Taz is an awesome guy. He's funny, and he really is a good person. But at that time, for some reason, every wrestler has a gimmick in the ring, and they have a gimmick outside the ring. And Taz's gimmick outside the ring was he was this miserable, curmudgeonly, guy that you wanted to be careful around. You don't want to cross, and he nothing could be further from the truth when you got him by himself. I mean, he's awesome. He's hilarious and he's really a great person.
Throughout the seasons, as he's come back as a guest, he's looked like he's had a lot of fun, and everybody enjoyed having him there, and he enjoyed being there. And that whole dick thing was not really being portrayed, so that's why I kind of wondered about that first season.
My
So
first season, he came in as a hard ass. He was, everybody thinks that he and Bob Holly and Bill DeMott are, they were the heels of the show, the bad cops. And to be quite honest, I was the real bad cop because they were blenders. They came in, they'd run for a little bit and they stopped. But I'm there all the time, and I'm like I just keep squeezing and squeezing and squeezing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and I'm there to push you until you crack or you succeed, and I'm not going to let up. And but I'm going to be fair. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be direct, and but and everybody's like, "Oh, you were too nice." I was never nice to those kids. Was I fair to them? Was I, did I walk around and try to be a badass or hard ass to them? No. Did I make jokes and laugh and have a good time? Absolutely. I never once let up on them because I knew that when that show was over, I had to go back to the wrestling business and continue to make my living, and that these kids were now going to carry my reputation around with them.
dude, so in that first season, you stretched CK pretty hard. He sat on his face and wrapped his arm around his head and twisted him up like a pretzel. And it was the first time they really showed you in that season getting pissed. And one of the very first thing I thought of was, wow, how often do trainers end up getting hurt training? Because I'm watching these guys kick you in the head, land on top of you, land on the back of your leg. How real of a fear is that when you still want to do this for a living and you're training at the same time?
It's tough. I mean, because I was very at that point in time I was very hands on, and felt it necessary to be in there and to physically, so I can move them and get them to understand how to move, and there's a real risk of them dropping on you, falling on you, hurting you, knocking you around, and after a while, that repeatedly happening, you finally just lose your patience.
So the second season has a much different feel than the first season does. Obviously, it's a bigger feel. I'm sure it was a bigger budget after the success of the first season. Um, we're not doing a tax return here, but was there a little extra MTV money in Al Snow's check for these weeks now?
No different. No, no
No,
different.
no different. Jeez. Okay. So second season kicks off. The very first thing I think of, I see Matt Morgan, and I think, wow, he's got to have this thing in the bag. Now, I've heard Matt Morgan talk about on why it ended how he was told, "Hey, we've got this tough enough thing coming up." Did he have a guarantee walking up to that? Did you know Matt Morgan was getting picked? Were you told pick this giant kid?
Well, Matt, I would have picked Matt anyways, and no, we weren't told to pick him, but you could tell that Jim Ross had a very keen interest in him, and rightfully so. You can teach a lot of things in wrestling, but you can't teach tall, you know,
And
and
huge.
you can't teach size, and and he had those tools. And then we just needed to see if he had any of the other tools, or could be developed and be taught, you know, and that was why he had that opportunity. But he wasn't a lock. There was no guarantee that you could know for sure that absolutely, oh well, this person's going to win. That wasn't the case.
Hawk gets in there in the beginning and starts cutting his promos and doing his thing, and Jim Ross looks over at you and says that he's goofier than a pet coon. Your wife Jessica would ask, "What the hell's wrong with a pet coon?" Right?
Right, of course she would, because she wants to have a pet raccoon, which will eventually eat everybody's face off in the house. So
First thing I thought of is day one after everyone was picked, he had a much better crew in season two than season one. Would you agree or disagree with that?
no, season two was a little different as far as the talent. Not that they were bad or anything. It was definitely a different vibe, and there were, right out of the gate we had, one of the girls kind of as a ringleader. The talent weren't supposed to do anything without the cameras following them at all times, and they took off and left, ditched the camera car with the camera crew in it, and all because the girl was like, well, they can do whatever they want to do, but they can't get rid of all of us, because if they do, they won't have a TV show. Um, you know, uh, uh, and it was kind of a little bit of that attitude, in the belief by the kids that like I didn't have a real interest, or actually, you know cared about their success, until it was demonstrated a couple different times, and they saw it and they were like, oh well, yeah, I guess he does. But it took a while for that to be developed, as opposed to already having that just natural connection.
Are these workouts over the top that you're doing on the first days of these shows when you're really trying to see who has? I mean, like these 3 mile runs uphill. I mean, the Big Show can't run 3 miles uphill, but he can still be a WWF superstar, right?
Big Show's 7 feet tall.
You got guys like Matt Morgan and other guys like that are out there running it, that are being judged on this. And I'm not saying that. I understand how it goes, or I guess I've heard how it goes in the past, that this is one of the things that happens
Not
when these.
judge, not judging them on whether or not they can run. I could care less. Not judging them on that. Judging on how bad they want to do it. What kind of heart do they have? How much passion do they have? They can't handle a 3 mile run. Go home. You think it's going to get easier? It's not. So if you can't handle a 3 mile run, I'm not judging you on whether you can run or not. I don't even care if you fit. If you're first, that don't matter to me. I don't care. I want to see what you do while you're running. I want to see how far you run. I want to see how hard you push yourself for the entire 3 miles. Do you push yourself real hard for about the half a mile and then you just coast the rest of the way? Well, that tells me something about you now, doesn't it?
Just in case the Big Show can run 3 miles uphill, I don't mean any offense if I ever have to meet him in person. I'm just saying he's a
Yeah,
big
that'd be
guy.
wise. Yeah, you might
he's
be smart to be careful how you put that.
he's a big guy, so I just mean any of the bigger guys that have been through. That's a tough workout that these guys are getting on day one,
Of
and
course.
I can't help but think to myself, this feels more like a reality show than a wrestling training regimen.
No, I want to see if they truly want to do it or not. I don't care if it's a real. I don't care if it's on TV or not. That's what I'm evaluating every single person on all the time, whether I'm doing it in OVW, or I'm doing it for MTV, or I'm doing it for WWE. I'm going to evaluate whether or not you truly, absolutely want to do this or not. Are you full of talk? Are you just lip service, which I've seen? Because I'm not going to judge you on what you do. I'm not going to judge you on what you say. I'm going to judge you on what you do. So what am I going to do? I'm going to put you under stress and duress and test you. Is it too hard to run? Go home. Nobody asked you to come.
I agree.
Okay.
That makes sense, and so I do understand that. It's just one of the things that I was thinking about as I'm sitting there watching, and I'm like, wow, this is an intense run,
Yeah. There
and
was a reason it was intense because you want to be a wrestler. You want to be a professional wrestler. And the requirements mentally, physically, and emotionally are incredible. And that's not me saying it just because I am. And then to be able to perform for WWE night in, night out, where you're on that kind of a platform, that kind of stage, and you're only as good as the last time you performed, that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of stress. You can't handle a 3 mile run. Go home.
how much season two felt a whole lot more like a reality show. To the point where it was the face to face, very long, drawn out, dramatic, sit down, your cut. Um, was that scripted? Are they telling you, okay, Al, walk up to this one and then move down to Hawk and from him go to, or are you doing that all on your own and just building that ridiculously great dramatic build?
I just started doing that on my own, and the initial season you know had asked me to just draw it out and not go right to the first person because the first time we did it, we did do that, and then they were like, next time, you know, pace it out and save that guy for last, and if you could try to think, drag it out, and so I'd go stand in front of people and you know I'd feel terrible, but that was what I was supposed to do, was to create that suspense and that drama, and I would tease the idea that it might possibly be you.
So, how much of the personal stuff, or do you even know? Are you there? How much is this being coached? I mean, like, is the crew telling Jackie, all right, now call your boyfriend and tell him you made out in the hot tub last night? Is that stuff
No, none of
scripted for
that.
them?
None of it. None of that. That all genuinely happened, and I know that you know that was all her idea to call her boyfriend and stooge herself off because she knew that she had to because it was going to be seen on TV
Yeah, but you didn't
by
have
her
to do it
friends and
right
her family.
away. What a dumbass.
Well, it's either way it's coming. So
I know. The whole time she's on the phone, I'm screaming at the TV and I'm like, don't do it. He's not going to know for months. You've got plenty of time.
actually, I think it went a while before she did.
Oh my gosh. Well, she did. She totally stooged on herself, and I couldn't believe it. Through the season two here, you guys are doing a lot more. You're doing traveling. You're in South Africa. You guys are riding hot air balloons. And is it when you're doing stuff like that? Is it more difficult now because you're building more of a relationship with everybody?
It's not difficult, in regards to I still know my responsibilities, and I still know that whoever turns out of this is going to represent me and carry my reputation around. So, no, it doesn't change.
Every single one of these selections were up to you and the trainers.
Yeah, yeah, I'm primarily up to me.
Wow, that's awesome. One of the big things that everyone writes about is, and as everybody knows, season two, it ends with two girls winning. Um, there were people asking, if we have questions coming in about, was there, were people upset that one of the guys didn't win? Somebody had mentioned that they heard that the paperwork said that it was going to be one guy, one girl, which I would imagine you guys had your bases covered. Um, the boys were both so bad. The men were both so bad on the microphone. How could they not be more prepared knowing that promos are coming? How could they not have something ready?
Um, well, cutting a promo takes a lot of experience, and Not many people can just do it naturally and pick it up. It takes a lot of time to learn. And that wasn't why they weren't picked. That had nothing to do with it. The reason that I picked Jackie and I picked um, Linda was because Linda was an attraction and she physically was very adept and um, was different, unique, had a ton of charisma, and had a great look. And Jackie had a great look, and even and as a girl at that point in time, initially she wasn't that great in the ring at first. She developed over time, but um, I knew that they could have utilized her just walking her back and forth to the ring, which is what they were doing with a lot of the girls initially at that point in time in WWE, and that she would develop as she had more time in the ring. Um, what's his name, Jake? I kept and held out hope because he had the charisma, the size, the look, the athletic ability until he got in the ring. And it all went away. Not to mention, he was about as dumb as a stump outside the ring and had it was woefully inadequate as far as just social interaction was concerned.
Dude, he told Kevin Dunn in his interview that he is not a quick learner and it takes him a long time to pick up on things.
And it did, believe me. And Kenny, I told Kenny, and I love Kenny dearly. I told him, I said, just you right now, it's not the right time for you. Because Kenny's a very talented, even back then, was an incredibly talented wrestler and worker, and got it, but he just didn't have that thing, that definable personality or character. And I said, just give it time, and that proved right because Kenny's went on to have a very good career for a very long time.
Yeah, still going. So
Yeah.
between season one and season two, as it wrapped up, which season in your mind did you guys walk away with two better prospective talents? Did you like the winners from season one or the season two better?
Uh, you know,
I'm putting you on the
there was
spot.
more. There was potential for season two winners, Jackie and Linda, but season one, Nydia and Maven were more prepared.
All right, Al. So we talked about seasons one and two, which were really very popular, and really you were kind of the star on both of those seasons. And I know that you're going to say that you weren't, but the internet and everybody talks so much about you and going back and looking at these. We're going to cut it this week right there for seasons one and two. We're going to come back next week. We're going to finish up with seasons three and four, which are some of the more popular, have some of the more controversial points in them. So if you guys have any comments about seasons one and two, any follow ups or anything that you want Al to elaborate on, go ahead and reach out to us. Our Facebook page is at Inside Al Snow's Head. On Twitter, we are at The Real Snow Show. Al is at The Real Al Snow everywhere. You guys can leave any kind of questions, comments, have follow up on the seasons one and two and getting ready for seasons three and four. Al had a ton of fun again this week talking about Tough Enough, and really looking forward to next week getting into seasons three and four. I always ask you before we wrap, what do you got going on this week? Are you out traveling anywhere? You got anything going on?
Yeah, I'll be in Bluefield, West Virginia on Saturday, June 2nd, and OVW will be having its Saturday night special here in Louisville, Kentucky at the Davis Arena on Saturday, June 2nd. Tomorrow night, we'll be holding the OVW television tapings like we do every Wednesday night and have done so for 20 plus years. And we're drawing closer to our 1000th episode for OVW.
Awesome. Getting really exciting over there at OVW. You guys have a lot going on, and check it out at ovwrestling.com. That'll get you over to their YouTube page, and you can check out some of the matches and some of the stuff that's going on over at OVW as well. Guys, also make sure you're still checking out Sensible Meals at eatsensiblemeals.com using code SNOW. Make sure you're checking Al's Facebook and Twitter as well. He's constantly sharing pictures and updates on some of the different stuff that he's got going on that he's eating with the folks at sensiblemeals.com using code SNOW. Will save you $20 off there. And make sure you're following our friends over at collarandelbowbrand.com too. Share your pictures on the Facebook or Twitter page of you in your collar and elbow t-shirt. We'll get a retweet and a thank you out to you as well. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this week. Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Inside Al Snow's Head. Until next week, I'm Jarett Orr, and of course, we're going to have Al Snow back with us next week to talk a little tough enough. Al, until
Yeah.
then, man, have a great week.
You too, and I hope everybody else out there does too.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, guys.